No mention of Hillary Clinton in the Saturday statement. But when the Times reported Sunday that Trump was told the Russian had damaging information on Clinton, he replied with a much longer statement. I was asked to have a meeting by an acquaintance I knew from the 2013 Miss Universe pageant with an individual who I was told might have information helpful to the campaign. I was not told her name prior to the meeting. I asked Jared and Paul to attend, but told them nothing of this substance.
Let's stop right there. Mark, you've dealt with these people. We've dealt with these people. How likely is it that Don Jr. would have called Paul Manafort and Jared in with all the meetings that you knew about and all the things you knew about and all the things we knew about on how that campaign ran? How likely is it that Don Jr. would have said, hey, I've got this meeting, guys. Come on to my office. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Middle of the campaign.
It's not totally impossible, but even if you accept their version of events, the fact that they had this meeting and failed to disclose it is phenomenal. It's possible that such a thing could occur the way they describe it, but it's unlikely. It is extraordinarily unlikely. Mike, this is not how they did business.
Well, one of the keys to the story in the Times today that we're addressing right now is the line that 3 advisors to the White House were briefed on the meeting, indicated to the Times that the meeting did occur. That would seem to indicate that they feel that Donald Trump Jr. has placed his father in some position of peril.
Well, at least his father is going to protect him. Oh, wait, no. Actually, they put out a statement saying, I know nothing. You know what? I was not with Fredo in Vegas. He was setting up those deals on the side, you know, so.
All right, I'll continue with the statement. We had a meeting in June 2016. After pleasantries were exchanged, the woman stated that she had information that individuals connected to Russia were funding the Democratic National Committee and supporting Ms. Clinton. Her statements were vague, ambiguous, and made no sense. No details or supporting information was provided or even offered. It quickly became clear that she had no meaningful information. She then changed subjects and began discussing the adoption of Russian children and mentioned the Magnitsky Act. It became clear to me that this was the true agenda all along, and that the claims of potentially helpful information were a pretext for the meeting. I interrupted and advised her that my father was not an elected official, but rather a private citizen, and that her comments and concerns were better addressed if and when he held public office. The meeting lasted approximately 20 to 30 minutes.
About the length of the Bill Clinton-Loretta Lynch meeting. So, David Ignatius, this is fascinating. His defense is, we thought she was coming in to give us information, thought she was going to collude with us and give us bad information on Hillary Clinton. But when we found out that she did not have damaging information on Hillary Clinton and could not collude with us, and it was about adoptions,
when you read it,
we called an abrupt end to the meeting. This is a defense. I'm with Mark Halpern. What did Don Jr. find out between Saturday when he lied and Sunday when he was forced to tell the truth? And why was he forced to tell the truth?
He clearly discovered that others were putting out a true account of what happened, and that he had to square his account with it or look like he was lying. I just would note on this question of adoptions, the reason that then emerged after the initial dishing dirt on Hillary Clinton, it's not about adoptions, it's about opposing what's called the Magnitsky Act, which is an attempt to hold the regime of Vladimir Putin accountable for the death of an anti-corruption crusader named Magnitsky, and this has been a key thorn in Putin's side. So this woman was coming, even on the best analysis, to argue the case of Putin against this American legislation attempting to hold him to account. This revelation, there have been so many, but I think this is really significant. It's so early, June 2016. It's so direct, a known Kremlin known apologist, propagandist who comes saying, I want to give you stuff about Hillary Clinton. It includes Jared, the campaign manager, Paul Manafort, about whom we are just beginning to learn. There will be a series of revelations, I'm just sure, about Manafort. And the final point, interesting, so like what's the lead at the White House? The lead is that Don Trump Jr. said, my father knew nothing about this. I mean, Don Jr. is falling on his sword, saying, my father wasn't aware. And again, I think we'll have more such statements from others.
So, and then there's this, if you look at it this way, government officials first learned of the meeting when Jared Kushner revised a security clearance form that initially failed to disclose the controversial meeting. This is the third Kremlin-connected Russian that the president's son-in-law has failed to disclose on government forms meeting with a Russian. The New York Times reports that Kushner did not disclose a private meeting with the Russian ambassador, and Kushner also failed to disclose a private meeting with the head of a Russian state-run bank closely tied to Vladimir Putin. Lawmakers are now questioning whether the president's son-in-law, who is a top White House advisor, should be granted security clearances after this third revelation. Kushner is just one of several Trump associates who've offered on the record or under oath omissions or falsehoods about meetings with Russians. Also on the list, Vice President Mike Pence, Michael Flynn, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and now the president's son, Don Jr.
Michael Schmidt, so Jared Kushner met the Russian ambassador to the United States, forgot to disclose it. He met with the head of a Russian-run bank with close ties to Vladimir Putin. He forgot to disclose it. He met with a Russian lawyer for the purposes of attending a meeting in which dirt was going to be dished on Hillary Clinton while they were still trying to lock down the Republican nomination. He forgot to disclose it. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill now, understandably, are asking whether he should ever get a security clearance. Where does this go, and of what interest might this be to Bob Mueller?
Well, this story, which was done by 3 of my colleagues, it pushes the issue forward because if Jared Kushner was just a regular government employee, there's no way that he'd be able to keep his security clearance if there had been this many misstatements about his meetings. So it's clear that he will continue to have one because the president would like him to have one. But if he was a regular government person, that wouldn't happen. The other thing here is that Don Jr. told us in March that he had not met with any Russians in his capacity with the campaign, that there hadn't been any of that. So it's not just the revised statement from Saturday to Sunday, but it's the fact that in March he said there had been nothing like this at all.
Well, and Michael, this continues to happen. The Attorney General of the United States forgetting meetings with Russians. Don Jr. forgetting meeting with Russians. By the way, Don Jr., a guy who several years ago said that most of the Trump money came from Russians. And this was a guy that set up the meeting, was connected with a Miss Universe pageant, and a billionaire, had a client who was a billionaire in Russia. I mean, this was a pretty complex relationship, intertwined relationship. There's no way Don Jr. did not remember this meeting took place. There is no way that Kushner did not remember this meeting took place. There is no way Paul Manafort did not remember this meeting took place. Well, they lied in disclosure forms, and they lied to the media.
This comes back to March. So by March, it was clear to the Trump campaign that this Russia issue was not going to be going anywhere and it was going to be around for a while. So what doesn't make sense here is why they didn't just take all the meetings that they knew about and said, look, got nothing to hide here. Here are all the meetings. Here's a list, you know, and put it out, because it would have taken the issue and taken a lot of the oxygen out of it. But what we have here is the fact that even in March, when they knew that the Russia issue wasn't going to go away, they told one story and they continued to revise it. As Democrats would say, they would say, look, if there's nothing to hide here, they've certainly created the perception that there is.
So, Elise, on top of it, there have been every step of the way questions about Russia and questions about why Trump doesn't seem to want to be sharp about the truth about Russia. How could they forget these meetings, given the fact that Russia has been a key question since before Trump even won the presidency?
Well, I think we need to look at the timeline of how all of this has unfolded and the timeline in the context of this election. So this contact happened in June, early, before the convention. Then you look at how at the convention, they ramped up, they changed the language. This was a concerted effort at the convention to tone down the language about Ukraine and arming Ukraine. Mike Flynn was setting up meetings with Kislyak at the RNC for these various campaign officials. You know, all of this was starting, and Donald Trump at the same time was saying very publicly, very loudly at a press conference, I want the Hillary Clinton missing emails. So I had thought that President Trump was pretty detached from all of this, that he was, you know, just letting lieutenants run rogue. But I wonder if President Trump himself had made this a priority, that he wanted those emails, and his minions were essentially trying to fulfill that request.
And so when did he say it at the press conference? Say Russia, they're 30,000?
He said that in July, I believe.
That was July, yeah.
Yes, WikiLeaks and Russia said if you do it, you'll be rewarded by the American press.
I mean, 6 months into the Trump presidency, Russia, the tentacles of the Russian story is strangling his presidency. In terms of getting anything done legislatively in Congress, I mean, the overlie of Russia is just precluding anything from happening, no?
It looked like he was, every time it looks like he's on a roll, it gets stopped. And then you have Lindsey Graham, I think, aptly and correctly saying that to form a cybersecurity plan with Russia seems a little odd to go forward with.
Boy, can you believe how tough the Republicans finally found their voice?
I mean, all of it doesn't make sense. For the Donald Trump Jr., who I happen to know him as a friend, the thing I don't understand is, what was his intent going into the meeting? If his intent, because if you read his statement, and you've said it, Joe, you said it and you glossed over quickly. If his intent was to actually extract or to hopefully find information that could be damaging to her campaign, but then he said she quickly changed subjects and began discussing the adoption of Russian children. It became clear to me all along that this was her true agenda. So if the true agenda was not what was going to attract him to the meeting, what was attracting him was the
collusion.
Well, exactly.
Right, the idea he could get information.
He made very clear he wanted damaging information.
So I cannot imagine, to Mark's, what you asked Mark from the beginning, would he have asked Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner to join him at a meeting where they were going to talk about, as important as Americans adopting Russians may be, would the two top deputies join him in the meeting? So he's got to, at some point, he's got to answer that question. And just to add on to Elisa's point, not only did he ask WikiLeaks and Russians to come forward, he said anybody that may have information will be rewarded by the American press. Remember, we've all said on the show, Jared, this is the different, we're jumping around the timeline, but Jared went on to try to find reportedly secret ways to meet with members of the Russian government. You have the president in the White House smiling with the Russian ambassador and the Russian president removing the American press. It just seems odd.
Well, saying at that meeting, we fired Comey. He was a nutcase. All the pressure's off us.
They just fired Comey. I mean,
yeah, and that's what he said to the Russians. Hey, we fired
Even if you wanted to meet with them, why would you choose that
over.
day? Even if you wanted to meet with them and say, well, you choose the day after you fire Comey to have them in and say he was a bad guy, we got rid of him.
It is astounding, though, to think just for a moment that so many within the Trump administration and the Trump family apparently think the Russians are our friends.
Well,
strong leaders.
What is the most difficult thing to explain is, why do they keep meeting with high-ranking Russians, or Russians with close ties to Vladimir Putin, or Russians doing Vladimir Putin's bidding, and they continue to lie before the United States Congress. They continue to lie under oath. They continue to lie on disclosure forms about those meetings.
And they continue to try and undermine the media who is reporting on this.
Well, and they can't even, in this case, they're dupes that go hashtag fake news can't even do it, because this story, oh wait, the call came from inside the house. There's somebody inside the White House that's leaking this. This is not from outside the house. it was all confirmed by people who work for Donald Trump. Mark Halpern?
David Ignatius, I want to ask you about a part of this that I think is pretty important that the Times story doesn't get into, understandably, which is Don Jr. says the President of the United States didn't know about this meeting, but you could bet Vladimir Putin knew about this meeting, right?
From what we know, the lawyer, Veselnitskaya, has very close Kremlin ties, and it's unlikely to me that she would have reported on her efforts to lobby the top officials of the Trump campaign about Russian positions without reporting that back. I think one reason that this surfaces is that she probably is a person who is subject to U.S. surveillance.
Exactly.
So her conversations, her travels, her later discussions about who she met with and what they said are probably knowable facts.
So there's this flow of information now that is dangerous to the Trump administration of U.S. intelligence intercepting things the Russians are saying, because presumably the Russians are delighting in what's going on, right?
So we're only in the imagining stage now, but this is June 2016. Donald Trump has just shown that he's going to win the nomination. A Russian plan that's been, been pretty low key, collecting information, penetrating servers. According to the dossier that was compiled long ago, parts of it may be false, but parts may not. At that time, in midsummer, the Russians begin changing the nature of their operations in the U.S., begin to think about helping one candidate in addition. They always wanted to hurt Hillary Clinton. So these are the things that Mueller, it's going to take him months and months to get to the bottom of. But Donald Trump said after his Hamburg summit, it's time to move on. Well, guess what, folks? The country is not going to be able to move on until we have a clear factual accounting of this by the Congressional Intelligence Committees and the Special Counsel, Robert Mueller.
We're not moving on. In fact, Q, I think our sound going to the break should be Karen and Richard Carpenter's. We've only just begun. All right, Mike.
David, based upon your past reporting, do you think General McMaster and General Mattis are on the same page with regard to the Russians as it seems most of the White House staff are?
I know that General Mattis has been much more suspicious in general of the idea of opening to the Russians than Donald Trump was during the campaign. It was one of his campaign promises. That said, you do have to. I separate in my mind the benefits in this period of great tension between the U.S. and Russia of having some contact, some dialogue, some ability to speak about things that can be done in common in Syria and Ukraine, and the larger question of Russian covert action against the United States. It's like during the Cold War. Just because there's a terrible threat doesn't mean you stop talking. And I think Jim Mattis would probably say it's good to be talking.
Michael Schmidt, what dots can you connect between this, if any, these new revelations and President Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin, the outcome, and the concern even among Republicans that he was rolled?
Well, what I found interesting here is that this is a meeting that the government just found out about recently. To the best of our knowledge, this is not something that's been on the FBI's radar dating back to the end of last year, the beginning. This is something that came up from Manafort's lawyers that they disclosed recently to Congress. So what this means is that it will force Mueller's investigators to now go and dig into this. They're going to want to talk to everyone that was in the room. They're going to want to go back and look through any surveillance that they have to see what other clues there can be and pull on the threads here. So I think that when folks say, oh, it's going to take Mueller a year, to get to the bottom of this and whatever, I think what they fail to miss is that things like this will continue to come along and threads will continue to be pulled on, and this will go on for probably much longer than we ever thought.
All right. Finally, Mike Schmidt, final question is, what pattern is on your tie? Are those teardrops or cherry bombs? It's like two extremes. I'm trying to figure that out.
They're teardrops that I got this from a professor once. So,
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, he must not have liked you. Michael Schmidt, thank you so much. It looks good. It's very handsome. I like the teardrops.
You should speak. You have breakfast on your suit. All right. We still have a lot more ahead on this developing story. We're going to bring in Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who says his party is having a hard time coming up with a consensus on a health care bill.